My dad took a job as principal of a high school. And the reason he did that is he realized, as a professor of biology at Northeastern University, that he was never going to be able to afford to send his 5 children to good schools. His way of making sure us kids got a quality education was to become responsible for our education and became the principal of the high school. He was tough, a disciplinarian, and a remarkable man who really, truly cared about his kids. So we were his children. The high school kids were his kids. And that's the way we referred to them in the house. We were the children, those were his kids. And honestly, he cared about every single one of them. It's really amazing. He was almost run out of that first high school in 1973 when he tried to bring sex education into the public schools in Vermont. And he was all but run out of town. I found out years later, my best friend's mother was on the high school committee, but her husband kept trying to get her to vote to kick my father out. Now, what amazes me about hearing the story is neither sets of our parents ever said a word to either of us, and none of us ever knew that was an issue, because that's the way responsible adults behave. But, it might not have been that way with other people. And so, he brought sex education into public high schools in Vermont. He was the very first principal to do that. Fast forward to the 80s. In 1985, I joined the Boston AIDS Action Committee HIV and AIDS speaker group. And I got trained and then went around to high schools and taught safer sex education to high school students. I was home one Christmas and mentioned it to my father because, HIV is everywhere. I asked my father, what about your kids? What about bringing some HIV education to your school? Oh, he went off on me. My kids aren't having gay sex and there's no HIV in Vermont. And then I decided when I left that I would leave my educational materials that I had learned from my training on the coffee table. And about 3 weeks later, he called me. He says, "Oh, well, I've been looking at that stuff." He said, "There's none of that stuff going on here." I said, "Look, it's winter break. All of your kids are working at the ski resorts for the winter. They make a ton of money in like 4 weeks. Skiing is an expensive sport. Vermonters don't ski. They work at the ski resorts." I said, "Well, what about, all of your kids are working on these resorts and they are having sex with people from all over the world, not just all over the country. And HIV is not just a gay thing." And again, he was all grumbly but he called me 3 weeks later. He said, "I think you're right." And again, he was the first to bring HIV education into the public school systems into Vermont. Amazing. Really amazing man.